public importance. So I think that the participation of 250,000 American consumers is absolutely critical to this process.
That's the number, 250,000. You know, you've been in this business for a while, and you were on Capitol Hill in a senator's office. You mentioned personal messages, but when you read the press, many of them also cite the fact that you made it easy for them by having a link with a suggested message. How effective is that to policymakers or legislators in Washington to see generated campaigns with very similar messages? Does it still work?
It works. Now, let me tell you how we do it, just so it's perfectly clear. The reason why we create a tool to make it easy for people to file in a regulatory proceeding is because if you go to the FCC's website, it's difficult to file. I mean, you have to click about 10 times, you have to fill in a complicated form, you have to know what you're doing in order to file a comment properly. What we've done is just automated the process, so all you have to do is point and click, and a lot more people participate that way. Now, what we do is we offer a suggested text, but we also offer a box for people to write their own comment. So often what people do is they cut and paste things from the suggested text, and then they write in their own comment. So if you read through the docket casually, it looks like they're all exactly the same, but actually they're not all exactly the same. People write in their own things. And we actually created a new feature at the SaveTheInternet.com website, which is a gallery of real people's stories, where they post pictures of themselves and their families, or their business, or their church, or their classroom, and explain why they think net neutrality is important to them. And those folks are the ones who are participating in this proceeding. And to me, that kind of real public involvement really matters, and I think legislators and regulators alike recognize that even if you have a lot of the same comments, you have thousands, tens of thousands of people who are genuinely spending their own time and their own busy days to participate in this process.
Fair for people listening to know that in addition to those hundreds of thousands of individuals, the mom and pop types or the son and daughter types, that your organization is also supported by some of the biggest companies in the business, Google, for example.
Well, our organization is not supported by them, but the policy position is supported. And this is one of the, it is unusual for us to stand beside a large corporation and be on exactly the same page on an issue. And this net neutrality issue is the only one I can think of where we're in that position. And at first we were kind of uncomfortable with it because we thought, what are we doing standing next to a big corporation? Usually we're the ones fighting against the concentration of power in the media system. But on this one, the reason why it works this way is this. The Internet fundamentally unites two core values of this country. One is the right to free speech. The Internet is the greatest engine of democratic speech since the printing press. And two is the chance to get rich. The Internet is the greatest engine of innovation and entrepreneurship that we've seen in generations. So for different reasons, the Save the Internet Coalition and Silicon Valley value openness and neutrality on the Internet. For us, it's all about democratic speech. For them, it's all about economic opportunity. But both of us rely on exactly the same policy to produce that open platform for speech and commerce.
If this tiered Internet that you are concerned that the lack of a standard will allow, how would it actually play out? What would people experience at home that you're concerned about?
I'll borrow from my friend Craig Newmark, who started and runs Craigslist, which you may be familiar with.
And who's been a guest on the program over time.
Craig's a great guy. Craig has, I think, the best analogy for what a non-neutral Internet looks like, and I can give you a couple, but I think this is a good one. Imagine for a second that the telephone network was not neutral, that the phone company could tell you what you could and couldn't say or who you could and couldn't call when you pick up the phone. So, for example, let's say AT&T is your telephone provider, and they've got a deal with Domino's and not with Pizza Hut, and you want to order pizza from Pizza Hut. You call up Pizza Hut, and AT&T interrupts the call and says, "We're sorry, Domino's is our preferred pizza provider. If you'd still like to order a pizza from Pizza Hut, click 5 and wait 3 minutes while all the other customers who are ordering from Domino's get their guaranteed service delivery." That's what the Internet would look like if it was not neutral. If you go to a website that's not preferred, a website that's not in the super tier, it will be slow, it will be delayed, it may not load up at all. And of course, those sites will be at a tremendous competitive disadvantage with their counterparts who are in the super tier, whether or not they can afford to bid up there or not. So what at the end effect will be is those websites with lots and lots of money will be super, super fast, and everybody else will be relegated to the slow lane. And the idea that a blogger could come online and generate an audience larger than the New York Times, which happens all the time, would be impossible. The idea that an innovator like the guys who created YouTube could start a new idea and sell it for $100 billion or whatever it was that they sold it for would never happen.
As I listen to the description of it, and just as a user of the internet, doesn't the same thing happen in a different way, but same net effect? When I do searches, and the things that bubble up to the top are ones that are sponsored programs?
Well, the search engines do that on the advertising, although not in the search engine itself. But even if they did, here's the difference. There are lots of different search engines online, a dozen or more. Even though the biggest names are clear to us, Google and Microsoft and Yahoo, there are lots of different search engines that we could switch to. The switching cost, the cost to the consumer to change between Google and Yahoo and Microsoft and Ask and other search engines is virtually zero. It is the time it takes us to type in a new website. Now, the switching costs to switch from AT&T to Comcast is a huge hassle. I've got to call one provider and cancel, call another and sign up, stay home a day from work to get the service connected, pay the early termination fee, pay the fee to get the new service connected, and then Comcast may do exactly the same kinds of blocking and discrimination that AT&T did, and then I've earned myself nothing. So the real problem is the switching costs for consumers and the lack of competition. The difference between search and access to the internet market is 2 choices versus a dozen choices.
If there is no net neutrality provision right now, why isn't it happening right now?
Well, it goes back to the point I was making earlier, which is congressional scrutiny on the issue and public attention to the issue. If the network providers, AT&T, Comcast, Verizon, were to start creating in tiered internet, start discriminating, start blocking content, everyone would leap on them. And there would very likely be congressional activity.
Is that enough to prevent it from happening without it being written into law?
I doubt it.
Why?
Particularly over time. Over time, the technologies that are used to discriminate on the internet will begin to migrate into the network. Over time, without a great deal of fanfare, the discrimination will start to take place, and then at some point it will be endemic to the network and it will be impossible to reverse. And that's really the situation that we're most afraid of, that in 5 years, 10 years' time, we all look back and say, gee, the internet used to be so cool. It used to be this equal opportunity, open platform. What happened? And then we dig through the regulatory filings and back to documents and say, oh yeah, there was this decision way back when, and it changed everything, and we didn't really realize what was happening, and now it's too late.
Do other countries have experience with dealing with this issue, and if so, how have they dealt with it?
Other countries, I've talked to a number of executives at telephone and cable companies overseas. They think we're crazy that we're even considering this. The issue has never come up in the world's leading broadband nations because they have lots of competition in the broadband market, and their idea is let's just put more and faster connections out there and let the chips fall where they may in the content business. Let's let every website operate the same, and if we want to get more revenue as network owners, we'll offer a better product. It'll be a faster product. It will allow a consumer to do more and better things, and that's the way we'll earn back our money. In
the couple of U.S. industry conventions I've been able to go to this year, the people leading them are also talking about faster super broadband connections that they're working on for their own businesses. Mm-hmm. Would that not be the same result?
Well, that's our feeling too. Our feeling is the answer ultimately to the net neutrality debate is 1, restore the neutrality rules, and 2, expand the speed and size of our networks so that neutrality, the idea that you need to divide up the capacity in your network and offer some fast and some slow speeds won't be an issue because everybody will have plenty of speed. So the more capacity there is, the faster the networks, the less of a problem neutrality becomes. Now, the false choice that has been presented to policymakers and to consumers is that either you can have a fast network or you can have a neutral network, but you can't have both. And the public response to Save the Internet, the 1.5 million people, the 800 organizations that have joined this coalition, our answer is we can have both, and we must have both.